Hi, my name is Gary Shiner. I'm a certified diabetes educator and insulin pump specialist. Today we're going to talk about extended bolusing. When we bolus for a meal, it's not enough to bolus the right amount. We also have to make sure that the insulin is working at the right time in order to cover that meal properly. Typically, when we eat a meal, the carbohydrates are going to digest fairly rapidly. So these are the hours since a meal was consumed. Typically, the blood sugar is going to peak pretty fast. Usually within an hour, the blood sugar is going to hit its high point. So that when we give a bolus of insulin to cover that meal, it usually does a pretty good job, especially if that bolus is given 10 or 15 minutes before we eat. But not all foods digest this rapidly. There are times when we have meals and snacks where the blood sugar rises much more slowly. The blood sugar might rise more like this than peaking just at that 1 hour point, in which case the bolus of insulin is going to actually peak too early. And if the insulin peaks before the food does, the blood sugar can go low. And then a few hours later, when all of the food is digesting and absorbing, the blood sugar goes very high. And that's a frustrating experience for all of us that have diabetes. The extended bolus allows us to take that normal bolus of insulin and spread it out over a period of time. My personal preference is to give a little bit of the insulin up front, but give a big chunk of it over the next couple of hours. So I'll often give 30% of the bolus right away and then spread the rest out over about 2 hours' time. So doing 30% right now and 70% of the bolus spread out over a 2-hour period. And that produces more of a gradual insulin activity that lasts several hours. The key is knowing when to use this type of feature. There are a number of situations where extended bolusing can be very useful. The first one is when we consume very large meals. The stomach acts kind of like an hourglass. Only a certain amount of food is going to move through at a time into the intestines, and that's where the nutrients absorb. When you have a small amount of food, it moves through the stomach pretty quickly. Large amounts of food will sit for a while. It takes time for them to make their way through. For example, if you're having several slices of pizza, it's going to take time for that food to digest. The blood sugar is not going to rise all at once. It's going to do so gradually over several hours. So with really large meals, an extended bolus is a good idea. Another situation is with prolonged or drawn-out meals or snacks. Examples include holiday meals or events where meals are being served in courses over a period of time. If you're snacking on hors d'oeuvres or snack things at a party, even popcorn at the movies, anything that's eaten over a period of more than an hour, it may be worthwhile to extend the bolus. Another situation is with slowly digesting forms of carbohydrate. We know that not all carbohydrates are created equally. Some digest faster than others. The slower digesting foods are called low glycemic index foods. And this includes things like pasta, berries, chocolate, dairy products, also legumes, things like beans and nuts. These are carbohydrate-rich foods, but they're very slow to break down. And with these slowly digesting foods, we don't want the insulin peaking too early. So if you're having a meal that consists mostly of slow digesting carbs, extending the bolus is usually a good idea. And the other situation where an extended bolus can be helpful is if you suffer from gastroparesis. Gastroparesis is a nerve condition that affects many people with diabetes, and it keeps food from digesting at a normal rate. Food sits in the stomach much longer than it should. As a result, the blood sugar may take several hours to rise at all. So for people with gastroparesis, extending the bolus is a great thing to do so that the insulin doesn't peak prematurely. There are also some medications on the market now that can slow down the rate of digestion intentionally. And this is designed to help prevent spikes in the blood sugar after meals. Examples of these include the amylin hormone and a class of drugs called GLP-1s. These are medications that intentionally slow digestion, so extending the bolus may be necessary to prevent a low blood sugar from occurring right after the meal, followed by a delayed rise. So as you can see, there are a lot of different situations where extended boluses can be useful. And remember, it's not enough to give the right amount of insulin. It has to be timed correctly in order to manage blood sugars well. Thank you.